Greetings gastronauts, this is KeefCooks, I'm Keef, and today I'm going to do something that's pretty close to the hearts of most Americans, I should think. I'm going to make sloppy joes. And the rest of the world are like, you what? A what? A sloppy what? Because, well, and actually the rest of the world, certainly the UK is a bit mystified. We don't have sloppy joes. They're just not a happening thing here. Although I did once have something that called itself that over 35 years ago when our son, who's now 35, wasn't even a twinkle. Me and Mrs. KeefCooks went on holiday in the northwest of England and it absolutely rained the entire long weekend. And we went in this pub and on the menu they had a thing called a sloppy joe. So I thought, that sounds interesting, I will have one. But it turned out to be just ordinary minced beef and gravy in a baguette. And it was okay, but nothing to really write home about. However, a real sloppy joe is a little bit different to that, and allegedly invented around about 1930 in either Sioux City, Iowa, or Key West, Florida, or Havana, Cuba. Isn't that interesting? Yes, it is. But not interesting enough to spend any time at all in explaining it. Look on the internet if you want to know more. If you enjoy this video, give it a like, share, subscribe, etc. And let's go on with it. Sloppy Joe. So your Sloppy Joe, if you don't know, it's just a kind of tomato-y minced beef kind of sauce, like a bit like bolognese, but much simpler, served in a burger bun. Sloppy, oh yes. So the burger buns, obviously you can buy them if you have a source of ones that you like. My source of ones that I like is me, so I'm making my own. So I'll do that first because it takes a few hours with the rising, the proving. I ran out of the yeast that I normally use, which is active dried yeast, and I bought this, kind of not thinking much about it. The tub that I normally get is green and this is yellowish, as you can see, and it's also called yeast dried active, not active dried yeast. So I thought no difference, but I looked on the back and there is a difference. You actually have to activate this first, unlike the active dried yeast which you just chuck in and off it goes. So to activate it, you want 125 ml of lukewarm water, and into that you need to dissolve some sugar, a couple of teaspoons basically, and the yeast, let's say a teaspoon. So leave that somewhere warm for maybe 10-15 minutes till it starts to froth and bubble and smell yeasty. So while we're waking up the yeast, we want some flour. We need 225 grams of strong white bread flour. This will be enough to make about 4 good-sized buns. A teaspoon of salt. And this is completely optional. This is, I should make a label for this. It's dough improver, which I've talked about before. Just a teeny bit of this makes your dough rise better and gives it a better texture. I've just been amazed. You know, I've used it 3 or 4 times now, and it is fantastic. And that probably costs £3 or £4 online. I'll put a link in the description down below. So those need to get mixed together. Okay, I put the pouring spout thing on. And there's the frothy, yeasty liquid. Pour it in. And a bit of oil, about a tablespoon. So it's all mixed up, and I'll change from the paddle to the dough hook. This thing is almost industrial strength. It's quite chunky. And we'll let that knead away for about 5 minutes. There's our lovely chunk of dough. So I'll just pop that in a bowl, cover it in olive oil, and wrap it in plastic film. Alright, and that goes in the warm place to double in volume, and that will take an hour or 2. Now I'm going to make the sauce, and the ingredients for that are half a kilo of lean minced beef, that's about 5% fat, a small onion, a bit of red pepper, bell pepper, probably a half or a third of that, and a half or a third of that green one. Tomatoey things, some passata, some tomato puree, and some ketchup. You need that for sweetness, although I'm not really keen on sweetness in savoury dishes. And for more sweetness, a tablespoon or so of dark brown sugar, and also a teaspoon of mustard, some Worcestershire sauce, or if you're in Yorkshire or thereabouts, Hendo's, and a chicken stock cube, not diluted. We're just going to crush it and sprinkle the powder onto the sauce when it's cooking. Also some olive oil to cook stuff in. So you need to chop your peppers quite small, tiny dice. Then we need to do the onion. Magic knife, you know the drill. First thing I need to do is heat some oil in a heavy bottom pan. I'm using this cast iron casserole thingy, and for a change I've remembered that I've got this induction hob that will work brilliantly with that because it's got lots of iron in it, and it means I don't have to go over there and mess about with gas. So heat the oil, throw in a little bit of onion so you can see when it's sizzling it means the oil is hot enough to put the rest of the onion in. And just let that saute for about 5 minutes. You don't want it to turn brown. Then add the red and green peppers, get those cooked a little bit. And then add the minced beef and stir that around. Try and get it browned before it starts to leach out liquid. Now we can add the tomato things, the puree, the ketchup and the passata. And then add the mustard, a splash of Worcestershire sauce, and a tablespoon of dark brown sugar, possibly 2. Also sprinkle the crushed up oxo cube over it, the chicken stock cube. And just let that simmer for about 20 to 30 minutes. Add more water if it's looking too dry, and sift in some flour if it's looking too wet. That flour will thicken it up a bit. Okay, that's everything in. That's looking something like, so I think we should have a taste. I think that's probably it. Meaty, tomatoey, quite sweet, but a bit savoury. The salt balance is okay, but I think we need some pepper. Okay, and I'm just going to add a little bit of water to that and put it on the stove behind me on low with the lid on, just to bubble away for about 20 minutes. Okay, the dough has ris quite nicely, so I'm just going to weigh it. Okay, that's 380, so divide that by 4. Come on, hurry up. 190, 95. So 4 pieces, the obligatory flour on the worktop. Oh, squeeze the air out of it. You knew that. Okay, and roll them into nice smooth balls. Yes, you really said that. Right, on a baking sheet, and I'll just put some butter in each corner to hold down this greaseproof paper. And then what I do is use something like rice flour, or you can use semolina or polenta. It's just something that won't be absorbed by the dough, but it will stop it sticking to the paper. Here are my 4 little rolls. They will grow, so leave plenty of space around each one. So I'll cover that with a clean towel and put it back in a warm place for it to prove again. It probably won't double in size, but it will get bigger. So we'll have a look at that in half an hour. Alright, there's my buns looking pretty fab. And I've got some melted butter. I'm just going to paint them. And I want you to imagine I put the air fryer oven on to heat to 180 degrees Celsius for a fan oven, convection oven or air fryer oven. And that's 200 for a regular one, and that's gas 6. Actually, I'm not going to paint these two because those two that I've already done, they seem to be collapsing. So maybe it's best to wait until they're actually baked and a bit more solid. So they go in the oven for 15 minutes and maybe turn them around halfway through. So I've just turned that round and given it another 5 minutes and then they should be done. So that's 20 minutes altogether. Okay, there's my buns again. Actually, the ones that had the butter on to start with, they've filled out and they're okay. But I am going to paint them all with butter now because that'll cool down and give it a shine. Now I'll just pop these onto a wire rack and let them cool down completely, and then we will have our sloppy joe. So you want to cut your buns in half and lightly toast it on the cut side. Okay, I got my sloppy joe sauce nice and hot, and I should point out I have messed about with it a little bit. I've added a sploosh of balsamic vinegar to counteract the sweetness, which I'm really not mad keen on, and also some smoked paprika to, well, give it a bit of smoky flavour, a bit more like barbecue sauce. So what do? We don't mess about, we just splosh it on. There you go, sloppy joe. I'll just take its photo, then we can do the taste test. Okay, here we go, my first sloppy joe for about 36 years. Oh, that's not half bad, actually. I know it's meant to be about the sauce, but that bread, that bun, is superb. It's fantastic. It's quite incredibly delicious. Well done, America. Nice one. Sloppy joe. I don't know why it hasn't really crossed the pond, but in our house, perhaps it has. We'll see what the missus thinks later. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you next time.